Basslines is sponsored by Hug Your Money. What would you do with more retirement income? Reliable increased income can be yours without unretiring. Ask your Hug financial coach about guaranteed income today. Hug Your Money. So unique, it's patented. And by West Side Walk Trio, inspired by the Jerry Mulligan Chet Baker Quartet. Cool West Coast style jazz in a piano-less trio. Contact Dominic Posha, 413-585-8769. I'm Frances Rayam, and this is Basslines, a place where we make time to reminisce. We'll take you behind the scenes with celebrities through stories told directly from the man who worked with them. So cozy up and turn that cell phone off, and please welcome into your hearts professional bassist, instructor, and conductor, Mr. Don Baldini. Welcome back, Don.
Thank you, Frances.
All right, now I had to cut you short on the last show because we ran out of time, but I know there is so much more to tell me.
There is.
So,
yeah.
Just for people who haven't seen the previous show, go back and watch it, of course. But also, just to give you a little background, Toshiko Akyoshi is a big band, a 17-piece jazz band.
Right.
And you're in Tokyo with them for 5 or 6 weeks.
Right.
Okay.
Well, so we talked about the food and how unusual that was. We talked about the rooms being much smaller than what we're used to. One of the things that, of course, was prevalent in America when I was growing up was train transportation. But we don't do that anymore. But the great thing about that trip to Japan is that we took the trains. I think we took one flight in that whole time. Everything else was the train.
The bullet train.
And it was the favorite bullet train,
yeah.
which goes, I don't know how fast, but it was
fast
just
as a bullet, Don.
Amazing. And
so you're traveling on the bullet train.
We're traveling on the bullet train, and one of the interesting asides, to get back to food for a second, they had shrimp more or less like we are used to shrimp in America, you know, like a French fried shrimp.
Yeah.
And so the minute we get on the train, we get out of our seats and go to the dining car and order the shrimp because it was the most kind of Western.
It was the closest thing to American food.
That we could, you know, so. In fact, we called ourselves the Prawn Patrol because
Patrol?
No matter what time of the morning it was, we would go and have prawns.
Yeah.
And we also found out that in the morning you can get eel, and you know it was very interesting. So anyway, one of the adventures on the train is they don't stop for very long, and I always had my bass, and there were a couple of times where I almost didn't make it onto the train. I mean, when they stop, it's literally a few seconds.
Yeah.
So we were traveling what's called first class because the seats were bigger. The typical, whatever lower class seats were very small, and they didn't want to make sure we were comfortable. All right, so here I am. I've got the bass in the seat, and I'm sitting in the seat, and this guy comes in who's literally as tall as a building. It's this huge guy. And he's showing me his ticket, and his ticket is for where the bass is. Now, they sold me a seat for the bass, but apparently, in those days, it was like half price or something. So there was a screw-up on the computer. They sold the seat twice. And so here I am, 5'5", and this guy is like huge. He's like 6-something. There's a funny ending to this story.
He needs a seat.
And I'm standing up, and he's like talking to me, and he speaks no English, and I speak no Japanese. His manager is with him. Finally, Toshiko comes over and starts translating, and I'm, and he's giving me all this grief. Finally, the stewardess, or what you want to call the person that services the train, because like an airplane, they have stewardesses. She found him another seat. Right. The finale to this story is several months later, we're back in Los Angeles. We're actually at a recording session with Toshiko. And one of the guys in the trumpet section says, Baldini, look at this. And this is the sports section of the Los Angeles Times. Yeah. And on the front page is a picture of this guy from Japan who is coming to Los Angeles at a martial arts demonstration with Muhammad Ali.
Oh my goodness!
And this is like the guy. So I'm arguing with a guy who could have probably picked me up and crushed me like a beer can.
That sometimes there's more.
Pretty funny.
Wow.
Pretty funny.
Did you go to see the martial arts thing that he was in? No.
No. And it's funny though. I wound up buying a Toyota Celica after that trip because that's what I kept getting to haul my bass.
That's what you were driving around, and you knew it would
once in a while in the back of a pickup truck. Yeah. But for the most part, it was a Celica with a hatchback that would open up and the bass fit.
And the bass fit.
And that's what they would drive, that's what they would drive me around in.
Economical.
With the bass,
comfortable, and the bass fit.
Now that trip to Japan was memorable for many, many, many reasons. Not only culturally, I mean, we learned a lot about the Japanese culture. We made many, many different, I think I made probably at least a total of 4 trips to Japan with Toshiko. And each time it was enlightening. We were there during cherry blossom time one time, which was just
that must have been spectacular.
Unbelievably beautiful. I mean, well, the other thing I didn't realize is that there's still a tradition, mostly between mothers and daughters, that during cherry blossom season, especially young girls who are marriageable age, that the mothers and the daughters go to these parks with the cherry blossom and they take pictures and they wear and they are so elaborate and so beautiful, and we would see this almost on a daily basis. And I don't know if that was something that a young girl would put as part of her but that was quite lovely. And I remember we were in Kyoto, and Kyoto is like a very special city in Japan. It's very religious. They've got lots of temples. I mean, people they make pilgrimages to go to Kyoto. And so there were a lot of that. There were a lot of people in Kyoto getting their pictures taken and the gowns, and it was really, really quite beautiful. Yeah.
Are there recordings that people could look up about you and the Akyoshi band?
We probably made a dozen or so recordings. The one that I think is the best is called Road Time.
Road Time,
and it's got a picture on the cover of a couple of the baggage tags on a suitcase, and that was recorded actually at the Budokan.
Yeah.
And there's a tune on there that she wrote. It's probably the most commercial tune she ever wrote. It's called Road Time Shuffle, and it's just a one of those. It's just kind of a bluesy. As it turns out.
How'd it go again?
Jig. As it turns out, it was very famous. It was very well accepted at colleges. That particular tune, they did some kind of a poll.
Was it the groove?
It was the groove, yeah. It just was,
Yeah.
Because most of her other stuff, speaking of her music, so the beautiful thing about being in Kyoto was, I can't remember what the name of the piece was, but it incorporated these Japanese musicians. And like I said, when we played the tune in the States, she had a recording. But now we could use the real thing. And there are these temples where they have these drums. I mean, some of them are huge, many feet across, and some of them are small. And these monks, I mean, the drumming and the flute playing is part of the religious experience. So we brought these 2 musicians with us that were part of Kabuki theater, and there's another theater called N-O-H. I don't know exactly what that means, but these were musicians. And they were like, it was kind of like having a combination of a priest and a jazz musician all rolled up into one. They had this whole ceremony that they would do before they performed. It was like part of their warm-up.
Yeah.
They were very serious about what they did.
Yeah.
When we were doing music, you could not talk about anything else. You
Very
couldn't make
pure.
jokes.
Yeah.
You couldn't, we Americans, we make jokes everywhere.
Right.
They were very pure. Afterwards, they could hang out and drink with the best of them.
Really?
But and they wore a special robe.
Ceremonious. Everything is ceremonious.
Yeah, and they do the, yeah. They make these unbelievable sounds. And this one piece incorporated all that, and it was amazing. It was just amazing to play with them and see them and do that. So that was another kind of a plus that we learned. And they were with us, I think, at least 2 or 3 of the trips. I don't know if it was the same guys. I don't remember that. But the other thing I remember about Japan that was quite interesting were the department stores, like a Macy's or something like that. They always had one floor that was nothing but food. So you literally could shop at a department store and bring home dinner.
Yeah.
And I remember going to those floors and seeing things that were just like here, we have apples. We have many different kinds of apples, but they're all relatively the same size. They're like about yay big. You go to the section with apples in Japan, some are like this big.
Really?
And they have like a plastic netting around them so they don't get damaged. And lots of green vegetables and things that we'd never see in a department store here. It was quite the experience. You talk about packaging. You would buy like a simple, let's say you bought a book. They would wrap it in a way that was like you didn't want to open it because it was so beautiful. Yeah. Or you would buy, I remember, electronics were a big thing. There was something called a Nakamichi. It was a small cassette deck, but it was like professional quality. We were all buying. I remember buying a ton of lenses for my cameras and things like that. We took advantage of that. Sure. But I can remember, buying a gift for somebody. It was literally a small vase, for like one single flower. Yeah. And I remember they put it in a wooden box. Yep. And wrapped it, and it had this Japanese writing on it, and they put like a little flower or something. Yeah. It was just beautiful, unbelievable. Yeah. Everything. Well, that was the other thing that struck me. I noticed in people's housing, especially in Tokyo, was very, very expensive. Yeah. In fact, what we learned, the concerts were all like at 6 o'clock or 6:30, and we learned that people would come to concerts after work and then go home. Yes. Because a lot of them lived so far outside of the city because it was affordable. Yeah. And the other weird thing is that they would sell food. So
at the concert?
At the concerts. And at the Budokan, now I'm not being disrespectful, but when we eat Asian food, we don't eat it like Asians. For example,
I'm sure that's true.
We pick up a bowl of rice and think you can eat it with chopsticks, which you cannot. What they do is they put the bowl of rice up to their chin, and they spoon it in like this. Yeah. And they often make a kind of a noise. Yeah. Well, you get 60,000 people doing it.
Oh, you hit
a concert hall. There's like a din that is pretty unbelievable. And that's another thing we just never realized, but a completely different culture. And the thing that struck me, the stores, everything was oriented towards the aesthetics. You go into a store and the way the clothes were arranged would be so beautiful. You didn't want to pick, like, I remember going in a store that just sold T-shirts, and they had all the colors arranged, literally like a palette, and you would almost be afraid to take one because you would ruin. You would ruin the whole effect of the rainbow.
Very neat culture.
And all the stores were like that. And I'll never forget noticing in people's houses, I mentioned it a little bit earlier, they would always have one area that was like a little bonsai tree or some flowers. Or even in the big cities where literally they might have had a square yard of dirt to plant something, and there was always something of beauty. Yeah.
Did you ever, or would you ever consider moving there?
That's a good question. I think I did think about it, but I decided it was just too different. Although I will say, I remember going to a temple outside of Kyoto. I brought my then girlfriend, Linda, with me on one of the trips. Well, there's a funny story.
Linda, the vocalist,
Well, we got to the end of what typically was our engagement. And I don't
Not
know-
yours and Linda's, the engagement of playing music.
Yeah. And, everybody was going home. And I don't know why, but I still had a bunch of money left over. And we decided...
You didn't drink like the rest of them.
Yeah, we decided we wanted to stay.
Yeah.
So she faked a leg injury
Oh.
so we could go to the airlines
Yep.
and get the ticket changed.
Oh, dear.
And so we stayed an extra 10 days.
Ah.
And while we were there, and this is poignant and sad and worth knowing, there's a war memorial in Tokyo, which is, of course, about World War II. And what I didn't know was the Japanese believe that a person's spirit stays on the earth whatever X amount of years. And we happened to go to that war memorial on the very day that the spirits were leaving the earth and ascending to wherever they ascend.
Really?
And it was a very strange experience being Americans,
Huh.
being at that park on that day. That's the only time we felt a weird vibe.
Yeah.
But and because we did stay that extra several days, we wound up going to Mount Fuji, taking the train up there, and things that we had passed on the train, but we actually had the time to be tourists because we didn't really have much time to do that. We would get up in the morning, get on the train, and go to wherever the next gig was. So when I was there for that 10 days, just as a tourist, it was pretty amazing. It's quite the country.
Yeah.
I would definitely recommend if somebody if it's on their bucket list to do it.
It sounds like an amazing experience.
It was an amazing experience. Yeah.
And it sounds like you almost did move there by way of not going home. That additional
Yeah,
10-day
that's
stay could have done it. But the real estate is so expensive.
God.
Are musicians paid commensurate salaries
I have no
to
idea.
afford that?
I have no idea. But I know that years later I went there with Sinatra.
Yeah.
And that was a totally different experience because we stayed at the Imperial Hotel.
Yeah.
He had an entire floor for the musicians and for himself. So, I mean, it was like our rooms were luxurious. His wife decided she wanted to buy pearls. So there were these pearl merchants coming literally, all day long. And we were treated like royalty. The song My Way, for some reason, is got some connection with the Japanese philosophy of life.
Yeah.
And so they had these vans, these like Toyota vans that they had painted special with speakers, and they were driving around.
Like driving through the
24/7
streets?
Playing My Way.
Really?
Yeah, there's like a My Way shopping center. I mean, it's just amazing. And of course, my connection with that song is I also worked with Paul Anka,
Yes.
who wrote the English words. He did not write the song, by the way. Two French people. A Frenchman wrote the music, and a Frenchman wrote the French words.
Do you remember their names?
I do not.
We'll look them up.
But Paul wrote English words using their melody. So every time the cash register rang for Paul Anka, it also rang somewhere in France for the guy that actually wrote the song.
I'm really sorry that Paul Anka is not there, of course, because he made English lyrics and fantastic. And without these lyrics, My Way is not my way. It's only comme d'habitude.
It's really interesting how that song has, made so much money for so many people.
Well, thanks to Paul Anka for the lyrics. I mean, the melody is great, but those lyrics are what people remember. It's like New York, New York.
And the lyrics,
people remember the lyric.
They're perfect for Sinatra.
Yeah,
You
yeah,
know.
they were perfect for him. I mean, it was basically an anthem for him. Now,
Yeah, it really was. And actually, it's kind of this, he kind of did things his way.
he did.
And it's...
I did not know about the French connection, if you will, though. Do most people know that?
No, they don't.
I think that's an odd...
They think Paul wrote it.
Yeah.
They think he wrote music and lyrics. He wrote lyrics for the Tonight Show theme, which I don't think anybody's ever sung.
Do you know them?
I do not know
I've never
them.
heard. Let's
It's
find the
something
lyrics
like,
to the
Here
Night Show
comes
theme.
Johnny. But he made, I don't remember exactly, but it was in the 50 or 60,000s a year off that song because it got played every night.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
5 times a week.
Yeah, that's incredible.
You know, I
And
mean,
you toured with them hundreds of times, the Tonight Show, right? You played with them.
oh yeah,
the
I
Tonight
played
Show.
with them for years.
Yeah.
I was the first call sub,
Yeah.
so that too was interesting. You know,
We may not have time to finish this, but I'm just going to ask, first person that comes to mind that was on the Tonight Show when you were playing. First guest.
oh God, there's so many of them.
Come on, quick.
I'll tell you a
First
good one. In fact, if people want to go on YouTube, because musically it was one of the best ones. John McLaughlin, the famous guitar player from the Mahavishnu Orchestra,
Yep.
was in town to do a guitar concerto. I don't know if it was at the LA Phil or the LA Chamber Orchestra or whatever. But anyway, he came on the Tonight Show, and everybody knows him as a rock, acid. He's a gifted guitarist.
Yeah.
But he brought an acoustic guitar.
Yeah.
And he played Cherokee, which Cherokee, if those of you don't know it, has been a standard because it's very up-tempo.
Yep.
Da, da, da,
Yep.
And it has interesting chord changes. And it's been often used as a unofficial audition piece for young musicians. Like if you can get through Cherokee.
Oh, yeah.
So
It's tough.
he played Cherokee with the band. And I remember the tempo, and I remember I was playing electric bass, and he kept, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, da, 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 da. And he plays the most amazing solo, and he's playing with a pick.
Yeah.
And it was just, that's on YouTube. John McLaughlin on the Tonight Show. Yeah. I can remember a famous incident that happened with Ray Charles.
Ooh.
Who
I love that idea.
decided he didn't like the way Ed Shaughnessy was playing.
Oh, really?
And right on air, he says, "Drummer, you're dragging. Ray played very much on... Okay, let's talk about this for a second. Most people don't realize there's the beat, but in rock and roll, people tend to play what's called layback. It's kind of a relaxed form of the beat. In jazz, it's more on what we call on top of it. In other words, it's hard to think of the beat as being an entity, but you can play
ahead of it or
with an
behind
edge,
it, right? Yeah.
Or you can play kind of a laid back feel, or you can play kind of right on the money.
Yeah.
And those are things as a rhythm section player you have to realize.
Yeah.
And
Ray Charles?
Ray Charles was on kind of the front edge of the beat. He liked that edge, that on top of it feel. And Ed was not playing that way. And of course, we hadn't rehearsed or anything.
Yeah.
He just came on, and I don't even remember what he was singing, but I remember I was thinking, oh my goodness, this is amazing. He's saying something right on the air, and of course they didn't cut it.
They didn't cut it.
No, they didn't cut it. A lot of interesting. Oh my goodness, the different acts that came on the Tonight Show it was staggering.
Yeah, you mentioned Robin Williams to me one day on the Tonight Show. You saw him on the Tonight Show.
Yeah. Oh my God, he was. Robin Williams was like a jazz musician. In fact, it's interesting. I used to sub on the Gong Show, and we shot at CBS. It was called CBS Fairfax. It was down right by the famous LA Farmers Market. Yeah. And
the Gong Show.
The Gong Show shot at the same studio, the same CBS studios where Mork and Mindy was being shot.
Oh, really?
And do you remember Jonathan Winters?
Of course, yeah.
Was on the
he
show
was the
as
baby.
like a baby. Yeah.
He was the big baby. Yeah.
Yeah. And of course, comedians and musicians are very similar in that there's improvisation.
Yeah.
And a Robin Williams and a Jonathan Winters, you could say to them, "Can of Pepsi," and they can run with
Off
it. You
they
could
go.
say, "Bushel of corn," and they'll do 20 minutes. Just like a jazz musician, they can improvise.
Yeah.
And we would often, I don't know why it happened, we would often be coming into the parking lot to go to our cars at the same time they were in the parking lot. And they would see the musicians, and they would immediately go into their shtick.
Oh, they were performing for the musicians?
They would just ad-lib. The thing about comedians is they love to perform. That's their essence.
Yeah.
They are, in a way, flawed that they want to perform.
Yeah.
They want to they want laughs.
Yeah, a class clown is never going to be
that's an addiction
silenced.
for them.
Right.
It's like applause
for sure
to a musician. So they would perform for us, and
Yeah.
it often got quite risque.
I was going to say, I bet there's lots
In fact,
you can't
downright
tell
filthy
us. Yeah, you can't
at
tell
times,
us. Yeah.
but it was hilarious.
Yeah.
Hilarious. And Robin
They're
Williams
so fast, right?
was just unbelievable. The two
Lightning
of them.
fast.
And you know, Jonathan Winters, I think I don't think it's a secret. I mean, he went into a mental institution more than once. I mean, he's a little bit.
Yeah, it's, I mean, very often the case. A lot of times famous people, pressure, whatever it is, pushes them a little too far. And yeah, it's not uncommon. But they were amazing together, either one of them on their own, but together they were unstoppable.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, and they were so fast. Robin Williams always amazed me because it would be just what you said. He would stand up, especially on The Tonight Show. I forget what year it was, but I remember looking this up on YouTube one day. And he would just stand up and spin some stuff off and then sit down again. And then Johnny would say one word or something else would just float through his mind. He'd be up again doing his act. And it was so fast you could barely keep up with him.
Well, I remember
Astonishing.
first seeing. I've had a long association with Connie Stevens, the singer.
Yes. Yep.
We became good friends. We even considered getting married at one point.
You conducted
I'm
for her
godfather
too,
to
right?
one of her daughters.
Yep.
All right, so I used to visit her in Los Angeles quite often from Las Vegas.
Yeah.
And one of the times I was visiting her, Sammy Shore, who was the opening act, he was a comedian that she used to use a lot in Las Vegas.
Mm-hmm.
So she said, let's go to Sammy's Club. The Comedy Store was Sammy Shore's.
Right.
His wife, Mitzi, people talk about Mitzi Shore because she wound up running it after they got divorced, but it was Sammy's Club.
But it was Sammy's Club initially.
So we went there one night, Connie and a bunch of her friends, and Robin Williams, David Letterman, and David Brenner, there was one other one. They were all new in town. And we saw them literally right off the boat. And I remember afterwards, I went up and introduced myself to David Letterman because we had the Indianapolis connection. And he said about Robin Williams, the rest of us will never have to worry about working after seeing this guy. I mean, they all acknowledged that he was, I hate to use the word genius, but he literally was a genius.
I mean, we don't throw that word around, but
he had the ability to just, he had this mind, and I think eventually, it tortured him.
Yeah. I think it came out, people thought that he committed suicide because he was tortured, but I think it came out that he actually had a disease, a brain disease, and he knew it.
Oh,
and,
maybe that's...
Yeah, and I think
I
he was
know that.
deteriorating. I could be... What is it you said one time? Right. If I'm wrong, call in, right?
No, you're probably right.
Yeah. So anyway, just ending this on an up note, because once again, we have eaten up half an hour like the speeding bullet train, right? But just to end this on an up note, I would love it if you'd come back. I may open up your list again and just pick another name, and we'll just talk about that.
Yeah.
Maybe we'll talk about your time in Los Angeles, or maybe we'll talk about your time in Las Vegas, or New York, or here. Whatever floats your boat at that time.
No, this is always fun, and the time goes very fast. I can't believe.
Well, you're a great guest.
Quickly, a half hour. I like to talk, apparently, I guess.
Makes it really easy. Really easy. Dominic said that it's like watching your grandpa tell stories to you.
Okay, well, that's a compliment.
Which is very, because you're very easy and comfortable.
Well, thank you again.
Well, thank you. This is Frances Rayam. We're signing off from another episode of Basslines. Remember, you don't have to thank us or laugh at our jokes. Sit deep and come often. You're one of the folks. We'll look forward to our next visit with you right here on Basslines.
Basslines is sponsored by Hug Your Money. Want a financial landscape you can see over? This is what it feels like to work with a Hug financial coach. Hug Your Money. So unique, it's patented. And by Ask Me Now, a vocal group providing sophisticated music for your next event. Contact Frances at 413-885-8888 or visit askmenow.live.